Hello, welcome back. In the last chapter, we had created a React application with the help of CRA, and we had seen how the components work in React. We had seen CSS also, how inline CSS and file-based CSS can be utilized in the component. Now, in this chapter, we are going in deep. We are going to see what are properties for components, and we are also going to see lifecycle methods and hooks. So with that, let's get started. So let's start with properties. Properties, which are also referred to as props, are a way to pass data from parent component to a child component. Props are used to make components more flexible and reusable by allowing you to configure a component's behavior and appearance from the parent. So for example, this is a parent component. From this component, and this is another component. This is basically a child component, if you want to say so. So what we are doing is we are passing something here. This is basically a property. So a property is what is being passed, and this property is received by the child component and used here. So in the paragraph tag, peak tag, we are putting the properties which is received as a parameter here. So important to note that the properties are immutable. That means they are read only and they cannot be changed. So I have used the same project as chapter 3 project. You can do one thing, you can download it from the Git, and after downloading from the Git, you can go to the appropriate folder where it has been downloaded, do a ls there, and you would find package.json there. So it has all the dependent packages. You may not see node modules because this is not uploaded to the Git, because these are some of the modules which are used and they are downloaded from the internet. To reduce the package size or to reduce the size in the Git, this is not uploaded there. So what you can do is you can do npm install, and it will install all the dependencies for you. Okay, so once you have all the dependencies installed, you can open the project in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open it now. Have the code open, which was from chapter 3. The only thing which is done is rename chapter 3 to chapter 4. Uh, so now if I have to run this, I have to say npm start. So if I do npm start, I should be able to see it in the previous state, which was like this. The name is still chapter 3. So we will start with the properties. So let's start with properties. Add a class called child props. So I have added a component called child props, and let me give it some definition. Okay, so this is a child props, and this child component, I'm sorry, and it is going to accept some properties, and that property dot message is what it is going to print. And I need to export it as well, export. Okay, so this is done now. Now let me create a parent component as well. So I'll say parent, and I've copied and pasted the function so that it is little fast. Only thing which I have to do is I have to give it the name child props, because that's what I'm calling this here, child props. Component name is exactly the same. Yes. So now what is happening here is we have a greetings, and this greeting is getting passed in a property here to the child component. And if we go to the child component, it is receives this message property which by the name message, and it prints it into a paragraph. Okay, so parent is containing a child and it is printing that property. So let me go here and I will add this parent component to another component. So I'm able to see hello React. That is exactly what we had done from parent to child. So if I do this, this is hello React from parent to child. So this parent component is containing a child component where this message is passed as a property, and this component is used where it is used in my component here. Okay, if I want to use it, let's say multiple times, and I save it, and I see that it is being used 4 times. So that is what properties are all about. Now, we had earlier seen that the components can be written as a class, or we have functional components also. Functional components are favored nowadays, and class components are not too much favored because of the complexity which they involve. So in the components, we have some methods which are called lifecycle methods, and the three important ones are component did mount. This is called immediately after component is inserted to the DOM. Component did update. This is after a component's updates are flushed to the DOM, and component will unmount. So as you can see, it is unmount. So it is called immediately before a component is unmounted and removed from the DOM. So we would see that how exactly these are used with the help of hooks. So it's important to know what these mean. So and we shall be seeing it when we see the hooks, how these can be implemented in the functional components with the help of hooks. If you read the definition, you can manage component lifecycle and behavior using hooks, which are functions that let you hook into React state and lifecycle features with functional components. Okay, so important to note here is these are for the functional components, not for the class components. So hooks allow you to add state and other React features to functional components. And like I said earlier, the components in favor is the functional components, and thereby hooks are very important to learn and understand. So we will see what are the major or the important hooks which are available. We'll not go through all the details right now, but only on the major ones for now. So before I go to use state, which is one of the hook available, let's understand what is a state. So for any component, there could be a state, which is like what is the current state of this turnstile, for example. So the turnstile could be in a locked state or an unlocked state. So if it is in a locked state, if you put a coin, it becomes unlocked. You push it back, it becomes a locked again. So we can see that it is getting locked if we push it again. And if it is locked and you push, it will still be in the locked state. Okay, you put a coin, it becomes unlocked. It is in the unlocked state. You again put a coin, it remains in the unlocked. It is for one more cycle, it is in the unlocked. So starting from here, these two are the states. So this give you the meaning of what exactly is the state. So for a component, there is something which is its inherent property, and the inherent property is called state. So use state. So use state is a hook which is basically used to maintain the state of the component. So in this example, this is where we are using this hook. So what does it mean? It means that we have a state which is a count. The initial value of count is assigned to 0, and we can change the value of count by this function set count. Okay, so if I have to update this state, I can say set count, count plus 1. So immediately the count would be incremented by 1. This is what the use state does. It allows you to have the state, plus it allows you to update the state with the help of set state function, which is basically in this case set count function here. We'll see it with the example. Now we are going to see the hooks. First hook we see is the state hook. So let me create one, state hook.js. So I create a component with the name state hook, and I'll give a definition here. And while copying pasting whatever issues had come, I'm going to fix them. I'm going to format the document. So this is what I copied pasted. Now let's see the This I'll say state component, and I'll say I have to export this state. Yeah. So see, one thing is if there is only one thing which you want to export, you can have default placed here, and then you can give any name during the import. But for now, just remember that for exporting, this is the syntax which you can use in the component. Okay, so I have exported it. What is happening here is there is a button which is getting placed, and this button is called increment. And every time when I click on that, it calls this set count, and set count, what it does, it increases the value of count by 1. And when the count will be updated by 1, this should also be incremented. That's what the state of the component is being stored. Let's run it. So, so this is the component which was state component. So I have imported it, and I shall do this. And let me go here. So this is what is being placed there now. Okay. So if I increment, we can see the state is being changed, and thereby the count is also getting incremented. So that's what is the state for this specific component. Okay, one more time, we have this placed here, state component, and the definition of the same is here, state hook. And what it does, on click, it is calling the set count, and set count increases the value of this state, which is count, by 1. That is what we are doing here with the anonymous function. Okay, so this is about states. Now, there are some basic concepts which we should understand before we go to next hooks. The first thing is the spread operator. Okay, so this spread operator is used to expand an iterable. Iterable is like an array or a string into individual elements, or to spread the properties of an object into another object. So let's see it with an example. So for example, we have an array which has these three elements. So if I want to create a new array which has these three elements plus a new element, then I can put this spread operator. So new array will be having what? It will be having the existing previous array appended by one more element, which is this 4. Okay. Again, the second example, we have a object here. And if I want to append something to the object, I can again use the spread operator, and it would create for me the appended object. Anonymous functions, so does not have a name associated with it. So anonymous function, for example, this function does not have a name associated with it. This is called an anonymous function. So anonymous function is assigned to a variable and can be passed as an argument to other functions. So that's where it is very important, because it can be used as an argument for another function. So this is one way of writing an anonymous function. The second way is writing with the arrow. And this is a more predominant way of writing anonymous function. So what we have done here is we have this anonymous function called myArrow function, and the definition of it is that it will print this into the console log. This is anonymous function. Another example here. So we have add as an anonymous function. It takes two parameters, and what they will return the sum of these two parameters. And then we can call it like this, we can call this add function. So we had seen in the previous, we had already previously seen use state. So now this is again the same thing which we are seeing, but what we are seeing here is a complex data structure. So these are the items. These three are the initial items. When we do this, this is items is initialized by these three things. Now what I want to do is I want to create an anonymous function called add item. And what this add item is going to do is it is going to create a new item which is having the ID. ID is the length of items. The length currently is 3. So 3 plus 1, 4. So ID will be 4. And then the name would be item length plus 1. and that would be item 4. So item 4 would be added here. How it will be added? With the help of spread operator, which we had seen earlier. So set items, previous items, spread operator, and new item. Okay, so and what is it? What we have written here is on click of button, this add item. Add item is what? It's an anonymous function that should be called. So every time I click this, it will add one more item, and that is what would be represented in this listing here. Okay, so first it will be 3 items. I click, it will become 4. Then I click again, it will become 5 items. We will see it in the demo also. Let's see another example of a state. Let me call it complex state. So I'm going to, because it's a copy paste, some non-required junk characters are coming. So I'm just clearing them. And so, so I have installed Prettier. You can find the extension by the name Prettier, and Prettier helps to format it. For formatting, what you have to do is you have to open the command palette, view command palette, and then you can select format document. Okay, and it will format your document. So that's what I have done here. So in this complex state, what is happening? So here the initial state, initial items is having this, it's having this array of objects, and when we do set items, we are increasing, we are including a new item. We have discussed this when we were discussing the PPT. We are adding one more element with new ID, ID equal to ID plus 1, and same for the text. So if I do this array state example now, so I'll go to my component and I'll say, so I have added it here. Now you can see these 3 items are coming. If I do add item, it will add one more item there. Okay, so that's what was done with the help of this complex state, which is here. We have 3 items in the beginning, which we were printing here. And then on click, we were adding one more item. So this is about the states. Now let's move to the effect hook. So this is a very important, another very important hook. It is called useEffect. In React, an effect refers to any side effect or operation that needs to be performed in response to a certain action or change. Okay, typically when we are doing component rendering or updates, these effects are used. And when we see this with example, it will become very, very clear what exactly this use effect is. So let's say that we want to do something when the component updates are flushed to the DOM. So this is component did update is one of the lifecycle method which we saw earlier. So if we have to use this lifecycle in a functional component, we will be using use effect. So use effect document.title equal to count. So the title will change to the count, and count is initially 0. On click, the count is increasing by 1. So every time the count gets incremented by 1. So whenever there is a update to the DOM, because we are updating here, count we are updating here, immediately this will also trigger and the document title will be updated. Okay, the use effect hook is a built-in hook in React, and we will see what other lifecycle methods can be uh, leveraged with the help of use effect. So we can see that there is an array in the end, this array. So there are two things, two parameters which are there. So a function, so this is a function which will be executed. So in this case, when this function is going to be executed, when there is a update in the DOM. And this what update, if this array, if array has a value, this array specifies the value that effects depend on. If any of the value of the dependency array change, between renders, the effect would be rerun. So if the value of the count will be changed, then this effect would be rerun. Okay, so if the array is empty, the effect is going to run only once. When we are initially rendering, that is the only one time it will be run if this is blank. So let's see how the use effect can be used further on. So this is another example. So here component did mount. So this is called immediately after the component is inserted to the DOM. Okay, so so component is inserted to the DOM, then we have to call something. This is where we are going to use again the effect, and this is the example for the same. So what we are doing here is we have this effect and it has the second parameter as empty. So this is going to be called only once on the initial render. And what it is doing is it is fetching some data from a server and then it is updating the component with the data which it has fetched. So what is happening earlier, the is data is false. Okay, so is loading is false. Is loading is true, I mean, sorry. So you would be seeing this loading and then we will set it to false here. The moment it is set to false, we will see the data which has come from the server. And this is the call which is getting us the data. Okay, so again, we have two functions. The first function is going to call immediately after the component is inserted to the DOM. And the second parameter is blank, which means it is going to be called only once. We will see this in an example again. And this, what is this site? This is a test site which provides multiple methods like to-do list, like photos. So it has some static data which is accessible using the REST API, and these are like meant for testing. So you can use it for testing any functionality. So here we are trying to give this demo, and that's where we have used this. I'll show it in a demo. Then this is the third thing. This is like called immediately before a component is unmounted and removed from the DOM. Okay, so any cleanup task, for example, canceling timers, removing event listeners, or unsubscribing from data sources, that can be done here. So that is what is clearing the thing. So for clearing the thing, this is how you have to call it. So you have to have a return and whatever you want to clear, that is what you are going to have it here in the arrow function. That is the definition which you are going to do. So what we did, we have a timer here which calls after every 2 seconds and it puts this message, delayed message after 2 seconds. So this keeps on running, but in the end what I want to do, I want to do a clear timeout. So for clear timeout, just before the component is unmounted, I want to do a clear timeout. So that's where this kind of use effect is very important, and it is called only once. So I have created this component here and I'm going to clean it up again. I'm going to format it again. And what it is going to do, it is going to update the document title. Okay, that's what this is doing. This is updating the document title uh, whenever what is changing, whenever count is changing. So this is basically component did update lifecycle method, and this is going to update the document title whenever the count increments. So whenever count will change, this will get executed. So let's see how. So I've included it here now. As you can see, I've included it here. Let's see. So if you see here, the title is changed to what? Count 0. So the moment I increment it, the title of the document is changing. Now it has become count 1. So that is the power. So this is on the render. Whenever the components updates are flushed into the DOM, this exactly is getting called and it is updating the document title. So like before, I'm just seeing if any garbage characters have come while doing copy paste, and I will format the document, which I have done now. and let's include this somewhere. So now I would do a data fetching component here somewhere. So let me say here, and I refresh. So data fetching example. So what it did was it loaded the data for me here. So it is called immediately after a component is inserted into the DOM. And that is exactly what happened here. And I fetched the data from this, and that was loaded in my DOM. So let's see the thing. So it is getting called only once because this parameter is blank in the use effect. So it is getting called only once. And when it is getting called, it goes to this specific uh, API, and it fetches this API. It's a get method. It fetches the JSON from there. And then what it does, it would print the JSON value here. Okay, li items it will create, and it will place the values here. Initially it will be is loading would be true. When it is true, it will be showing loading. Once the loading is done, it will fetch the value and it will place it here. So that's what it does. Okay. So that's what is about use effects. That is the two common examples which we wanted to see about the use effect and how it is very powerful. So in this video, we have seen uh, the properties, we have seen hooks, we have seen life cycle methods, and then we have seen examples of uh, use state and use effect, uh, how those hooks are so very useful. Uh, with this, I end the video. Thank you very much.